Hey friends, Sean from Draft Therapy here, and I'm ticking away the moments that make up a dull day, so let's get into the news. First up is more of an updated release, but because we don't have a whole lot of news, we're going to call it news. As I first found out from longtime viewer Paul Lambrix, Bell's is releasing Hopslam in October. Specifically, it should be hitting shelves near October 17th because that's when they plan to ship it. Bell's explains the reason for this is so more people can enjoy the iconic beer with friends and family over the holiday season. Personally, I enjoy drinking it alone and in a dark room away from people, but it also gives Bell's the opportunity to compete during the holiday season with those other higher ABV beers that start to come out at the beginning of the colder months rather than after the holidays as it usually does. Hopslam has traditionally been a January release, and this is the first time since Bell's was sold to Lion that this release date will be changed so far. Big congrats to two Michigan breweries that won medals at the Great American Beer Festival held last week in Denver, Colorado. Territorial Brewing Company in Springfield, Michigan won gold in the American Fruit Beer category for Berry Berry Quite Contrary, and the Royal Oak Brewing Company in Royal Oak, Michigan struck gold with their Northern Kolsch, which is, as you can imagine, a German-style Kolsch. Berry Berry Quite Contrary is listed as a 7% Brut Rosé Lager, and Northern Kolsch is surprisingly a 4.2% Kolsch. And according to Untappd, that's where I got all that information from, so hopefully those descriptions are accurate, as my struggles with Untappd have been well chronicled on this channel. Let's move on to new releases. Big Deal Brewing has hit the state. If you're not familiar, Big Deal Brewing is a collab between Barstool Sports, Spittin' Chicklets, and Labatt Brewing, which means that this will probably be like every other macro lager you've ever seen in your entire life, with a slight yet subtle change. In other words, it's going to be a beer. Evil Genius Brewing out of Philadelphia is available here in Michigan, which means you may notice a familiar blue and white box on your local store shelves, because Evil Genius has collaborated with White Castle to release the Tangerine IPA they call It Hits Different. It Hits Different is brewed with Centennial and Sabro hops to commemorate White Castle's 100th birthday. This collab will be available in states where Evil Genius distributes. If you're a White Castle fan, you can find this beer in Delaware, Maryland, New Jersey, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Virginia, Rhode Island, and of course, Michigan. In closer to home news, Old Nation Brewing has announced another new beer this time around. It's an Italian-style Pilsner they've named Rubicon. Per their Facebook page, they state it's their interpretation of a classic style with an additional dry hopping step. If you're a fan of Pilsners, and Italian-style Pilsners in particular, give it a look. It should be hitting shelves on October 24th. Diving into the new approved labels from the TTB, we've got a few familiar faces and a few new ones. So we'll start with the familiar first. Shorts has a trio of approvals, and they're changing up their branding a little bit. No more dancing shorts that we've seen on all the bottle caps, on all the labels. These new labels all feature the new Shorts logo, and first up is Spring IPL, which is an India Pale Lager, aka a cold IPA, made with Michigan ingredients. Then we have the latest rendition of Psychedelic Catgrass, which is a triple dry hopped American IPA, and Power of Love, which is a raspberry rosemary ale blended with lemonade. Two things I've noticed about the new Psychedelic Catgrass and Power of Love is that Shorts is finally putting ABV on their labels. I'd like to think that they've hopefully seen my videos where I've pleaded that they do this, but something tells me that isn't the case. They just decided to eventually do it because everybody else does. Catgrass is a 7.5% IPA, and Power of Love is a 2.5% ale, so feel free to chug away on that one. Next up is Odd Side Ales. They've got a load of interesting stouts coming out, and I don't think it's crazy to think that some of these will be released for Black Friday. We've got Big Kahuna, which is his 12.36% bourbon barrel-aged imperial stout with toasted coconut. Dark of Night is an 11.25% rye whiskey barrel-aged imperial stout. Sidebar Coffee Stout, which is a 7% stout featuring Ethiopian coffee from Odd Side's own Sidebar Coffee Bar. We've also got a pair of rye hipster brunches, both the traditional variety and the macadamia white chocolate rye hipster brunch stout, both at 11.6%. And last but not least from Odd Side Ales is Old Fashioned, which is an imperial ale aged in whiskey barrels with orange bitters extract, which of course is a cocktail-inspired beer, aka an old fashioned. These seem to be really popular as we start to wind down into winter. Along for the ride is another new all-day IPA from Founders. This time it's a West Coast-style session IPA at 4.7%. We've also got a couple from North Peak Brewing Company with Swell, a 5.5% hoppy wheat ale, and Switchback, a 4.7% clementine wit. Then Austin Brothers is hitting us with LSPR Lager, a 5.5% lager brewed for the Lake Superior Performance Rally up in Marquette. And rounding out the new approvals are a pair from Loaded Dice Brewing Company in Troy. They've got a 6.2% Luckiest Man Alive IPA and the 7% West Coast IPA 4-hour, 20-minute road trip. Oh, that Jeff and his thinly veiled puns. On to event news. This weekend, Brew Detroit is releasing their barrel-aged Imperial Stout that they call Depth 3. This year, they aged their Imperial Stout with vanilla bean base beer in Blanton's bourbon barrels for 9 months. That's a lot of bees that I just said. Depth Day starts at 3 p.m. on Saturday the 15th. They'll have bottles available for purchase, as well as some bottles of last year's edition of Depth 2. For what it's worth, Depth 2 was really, honestly, my favorite bourbon barrel-aged beer that I didn't make a video for review. I'm definitely looking forward to try this year's edition. I'm hoping it's just as good as last year's, or hopefully better, and I'm going to try to live stream from Depth Day this year. But of course, best laid plans, no promises there. On to the question of the week. How do you keep your weight down while drinking craft beer? I haven't drank since August, and I'm normally a low-carb kind of guy when I'm not drinking. After 2 months of being low-carb, I'm just finally starting to drop some weight. When I was drinking and riding a bike 100 miles a week, I could barely even maintain my week with all these 400-calorie juice bombs. What do you guys do to battle back the LBs? Let me know in the comments and send me an email. And that's it for me this week. If you enjoyed this Michigan Beer News Blast, give me a like, subscribe if you haven't. And if you got a friend that thinks Hopslam's coming out in January and will be surprised to see it on shelves in a couple weeks, point them to these videos in this direction, because we got a lot of things that we can update them on. Lots of information here. Also, let me know in the comments down below what kind of news you want to see from these videos going forward. I'm going to try to mention some regional beer fests that are going on for the weekend. Thanks for the suggestions from DJR001 for that, but I haven't really gotten a good source for that kind of information yet. So if you have a hot tip or you have an upcoming event you want me to share, hit me up at drafttherapy@gmail.com or in the comments down below. So until next time, I'm Sean from Draft Therapy signing off. Remember to drink craft beer, support your local breweries, and until next time, don't forget to treat yourself to a little draft therapy. We'll see you next time. Cheers.